Pittsburgh Steelers got the win, but missed the playoffs. But did they accomplish what was the most important thing this season? We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast on a bittersweet Victory Monday. I'm Chris Carter, your host. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for all our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Steelers fans, disappointing Monday in a way, because you wanted your team to get the win. They did that, and did that in one of their better performances of the season, winning by 14, putting up 28 points in a win. You take that as far as the results there. But of course, the Bills do their job in beating the Patriots, but the Jets come up just short against the Dolphins with a last-second field goal that puts the Dolphins over. And I know some people are out there saying that the horse collar penalty on Waddle was bad. You got to beat the Dolphins or the Patriots or the Browns or any of those teams early in the season, and then that game wouldn't have mattered. And not to say that the call wasn't bad or whatever. Who cares? The Steelers, they made their bed, and as Mike Tomlin would say, now they have to lie in it. But I think if people want to feel sour about the way the Steelers ended this season, that's their right. But I think they'd be missing the point of what this season was always meant to be. The Steelers came into this season. Everyone knew this was very much a rebuilding year where they were trying to find the substance that would be the new core that the Steelers are building. And we've talked a lot this season about leadership, about finding those players that could dig deep in those tough moments and find answers for you to come out on the other side victorious. And early in the season, it looked bleak because they were 2-6, 3-7. To start the season, lots of tight games where they weren't finding answers, a couple blowout losses to the Bills and the Eagles, and there's some disappointing moments. But what we were saying the entire time on this show, several of the guests we brought on were saying, hey, there are things brewing here that will kind of spark wins later in the season if things go the right way. And by and large, they went the right way in the second half of the season. And yes, the Steelers had an easier schedule in the second half of the season. It's what we said was going to happen, and it was up to them to capitalize on it to finish with a winning record. And they did. Mike Tomlin, of course, keeps his non-losing season streak record alive since the start of his time head coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, it's a winning season. It's not just a non-losing season. It's literally a winning season. Just doesn't get the job done getting them to the playoffs. But I think, again, the journey of getting there and the learning that what the Steelers have been trying to do is very important. I asked Cam Heyward about this after the game was over in the locker room, and he wasn't happy, but at the same time, he, being the vet, he's been in this position before, and he understands where everything is. Here was Cam Heyward in the locker room when I got to ask him for a little bit, just talking about what he saw out of the Steelers in their push.
There's something special brewing with the younger guys who pitched in for a 7-2 finish on the year that were learning how to do this.
Younger guys, older guys, of age, middle guys. I don't know. I think everybody can contribute. You had to go to Baltimore, win a night game. You had to win those two AFC North games back to back. Man, that is something you can really keep growing on and keep building on. And I can't say enough about the guys that just kept battling back and trying to get better.
That right there is a big reason why Cam Heyward's a leader, is because I think that he captures the essence of what is important in moments like that where the Steelers are playing back-to-back division games at the end of the season. They need to win all of them to have a chance at the playoffs. And essentially they were playoff games. It didn't lead to the playoffs, of course, but they needed to win all of them to keep their hopes alive. And we can spend all day pointing back, and I'm sure we will spend time this offseason pointing back to what points were the most costly. What was the biggest point where the Steelers could have overcome the most simplest moment or the most simplest loss in the season to try and get there. You could point to Gunnar Olszewski's fumble against the Patriots. You could point to Kenny Pickett's interceptions against the Dolphins. You could point to, an interception and then giving up, points to Zach Wilson and the Jets. You could point to a blocked extra point and 3 interceptions against the Ravens. You could point to a lot of different things this season. But the bottom line is that, to me, like, the goal again was this year was finding your feet, finding the core for the future. And I do think that you've gotten very good signs that you may have done that. Kenny Pickett, the way that he played in this game against the Browns, 13 of 29, 195 yards, 4 touchdown pass. The Steelers, of course, winning 28-14 there. They finally put together, multiple scoring drives. In fact, three touchdown drives in this game. Could have been 4 if the opening drive didn't end the way it did. I will say, I thought Mike Tomlin made a mistake not challenging the Najee Harris run. I couldn't tell from the booth if it was as obvious from the press box, but I couldn't tell from the press box if it was as obvious as it looked, as if it was obvious that it was a touchdown. And then, as people were saying, oh yeah, it was obvious. And then I got a good clean look at the review. I'm like, no, that should have been challenged. Should have been ruled a touchdown in the first place. But Mike Tomlin should have thrown the challenge flag. Granted, thinking, hey, we've dominated short distance all year. The offensive line's getting great push. Just get them out there and we won't waste a timeout. We'll just make it not matter. And then it comes back to bite them when Najee Harris loses his first fumble in a regular season game as a Pittsburgh Steeler in his entire career. So I think that was unfortunate, but they found a way to overcome it. They could have had 4 touchdowns in this game. And they still found ways to answer. But I think, again, this is about resilience. It's not necessarily about all the stats that go into things. Like, you look at Kenny Pickett's stat line at 13-29 for 195 yards and touchdowns. It's not overly impressive, but rising up in key moments. When the Browns got their first touchdown and there was a lot of doom and gloom about, oh man, that's it. That's the season. It's over. The Steelers offense can't score. The Steelers then mounted a really nice 75-yard drive, 9 plays, got down the field, 4 minutes, 40 seconds, and Kenny Pickett hits George Pickens for a touchdown that we'll talk about in a little bit more in depth in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, because we talked to him and George Pickens after the game. But in doing that, it put the Steelers right back in it, and then the Steelers defense got an interception, and then they got a field goal. 4 straight scoring drives for the Steelers. If someone had told you that early in the season, you'd think that they were lying. But the way that the Steelers fought in this game, you saw the collective coming together. You saw, we talked all season about how the offensive line coalesced, how the run game improved, how the run defense improved, how the secondary found answers. And there's certain things that, still need answers. The linebacker group didn't finish as strong. The off-ball linebackers, the pass rushers looked actually really sharp, and we'll talk about them too as we go along here. But by and large, I think the Steelers, they found, Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, and of course you knew about TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and a bunch of guys there, but you're finding core players that you can build a nucleus with, which is what this team needed to do. And I know it's disappointing. No playoffs, you finished 9-8, you look at it and you could have finished higher, but we knew that this season was not the year that they were going to be able to take down a top dog like the Chiefs or the Bills, unless it was an all-time ridiculous upset that was then, not followed up with consistency throughout the playoffs or anything like that. I think that one of the biggest objectives, and we debated this all year, especially when they were down and looked like they were out at 2-6, the biggest objective was to make sure that you developed Kenny Pickett and you saw progress. And there is no denying that we saw progress from Kenny Pickett. We'll talk more about that progress in depth, because I thought there were some really good reads he made in this game and some really good signs that he'll continue to improve in how he makes his reads with the way he played the Browns. We'll talk about that in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, so stick with us. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Tommy John. Tommy John, of course, is one of our great sponsors. They and with winter mornings being really brutal, Tommy John's an easy way to tackle your day and do it comfortably with Tommy John's loungewear that you can take cozy on the go wherever you go. When you start the year by getting Tommy John, you're going to get something that's so much more comfortable. That over 20 million pairs have been sold, thousands of 5-star reviews, and people love Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. For example, I have some Tommy John sweatpants, and they are the best. I wear them around the house. I wear them when I'm chilling, and I feel amazing. It's great for just being cozy around the house. Plus, it's backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. And you can get 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/lockedon right now. So go there right now. That's 20% off right now at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for details. We're also brought to you, and this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. We all know how sometimes life is going to have its twists and its turns and its challenges that make it hard for you to navigate through it all and find the right answers. I've faced plenty of times in my life when I've had a lot of burdens, a lot of things that I have little time to figure out. And sometimes I just needed help from a good therapist. BetterHelp Online Therapy is here to help you find the right therapist who can match with you. And these are licensed professional therapists, and they help you find them often in less than 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. With therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you. That's where BetterHelp comes in, because they make it easy and free to change therapists whenever you feel like you need to. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. As we always say here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, when we get back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling. So let's keep it rolling here. As I was talking about before with Kenny Pickett, the biggest goal, because you were hoping that you found your franchise quarterback. When you spend a first-round pick on a quarterback, you hope that it's the hit, that you don't got to invest back into that position for a very long time, the same way the Steelers didn't have to invest into it with Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that with Kenny Pickett, I've said all season long, I think he can grow to be the guy. I've never said he was the guy right now, right away, but I think that he has the potential for growth, and that's what I've always seen from him at Pitt. And I think that he continued to show that as the season went on. I mean, you look at how he started this year in a lot of ways for the Steelers, and there were some really, really rough moments, some rookie moments. In his first appearance against the Jets, he threw 3 interceptions. 1 interception was proved ultimately costly and gave the Jets their final drive. His second game was against the Bills when they got slaughtered 38-3. And their first win with him as a starter came with him on the bench because he got hurt in that game, and Mitch Trubisky had to come in that one. Then he throws 3 picks against the Dolphins. So that's a really tough start. And then a blowout loss against the Eagles. But then bye week came. He got a chance to step back, look at his own tape a little bit more, and you saw them start to put things together. He's able to lead a 20-10 win over the Saints, puts up 30 points against the Bengals, helps, and then that stretch at the end of the season where they finish 5-1, beating the Colts, the Falcons, the Raiders, the Ravens, and now the Browns. And you look back throughout that entire stretch, he threw 1 interception since the bye week. That shows that he's doing what he's supposed to do, because this was not a team that was built to be aggressive in the passing game and take all the risky shots. It was built to win with defense, win with the ground game, and let the passing offense kind of make the plays that it has to, but don't kill the team. And he fit that game plan during the second half of the season. And I think that shows growth there. And talking about growth, I got to ask him after the game when he was at the podium about his touchdown pass that he threw, because it was something that I saw develop in real time. I believe I was standing there with Mark Caboli and Ray Porter in the press box, and just watching the game. I just see the Browns go 3 high. I see George Pickens hit the seam, and I'm like, it's right there. And Kenny Pickett saw it, threw it, easy connection. I mean, some people were like, wow, that was a busted coverage. I'm like, no, that was the coverage. Kenny Pickett just read it perfectly. And Kenny Pickett talked about how that was something they saw and wanted to exploit on film. Here's Kenny Pickett talking about that touchdown and about his overall growth in the offense and with his teammates, because I think, again, that was the biggest thing here. Take a listen to Kenny Pickett after the game.
Kenny, your touchdown toss to George Pickens seemed a lot like your Raiders touchdown toss, hitting the seam, going up the middle. How have you guys come together and found more ways to connect as the season has come along?
Yeah, I think we do a good job of moving around a little bit more, not keeping them in the same spot. The more we can move 18 and 14 around, obviously with Pat in there as well, it just creates some problems. So it was something that we saw throughout the week, watching tape. The Saints ran it, and I kind of was just like, hey, I think this, has a shot. So, we let George inside, had Tay on the outside there, put Pat at number 3, so that backside safety, he did exactly what we did, what we saw on tape. So it's pretty cool when, you put something in like that, you get a call perfectly in the right situation for a touchdown. It's awesome.
How do you feel about the improvements you've made in just preparing for games and things that you can see like that going into a matchup?
It's big. I felt like, the offense started to become my own the more I was playing in it, taking real ownership of it instead of just kind of playing catch up, when I got thrown in there a little bit earlier. And I was just worried about executing the plays, and now I felt like I had everything at my disposal when I was coming to the line of scrimmage. So, I think I made a good jump there in the learning curve, and, I want to make that leap into year 2 now.
When you say it made it my own, is more of your input or more of the playbook available to you?
Both. Just knowing, instead of running out there and just executing plays, knowing where, alerts are and certain different things where, I can do so many different things and see different things, and, everyone's running to win. Everyone thinks that they can get the football because it can go anywhere at any given time. Just taking real ownership of the offense.
Is that how you end up hitting Connor Heyward on a couple of huge plays?
Yeah, that's a good example. What they kind of threw a different coverage at us. Connor did a great job of adjusting his route and splitting safeties, and I just had to put it over top of the guy covering him, and it was a huge play for us.
And I think right there, you hear him talking about, the huge plays, but also the preparation that he went into it. He said, yeah, like I was able to see more things, and that's huge for us. And he wants to take an even bigger leap because he needs to take that second year leap. All that comes from the preparation that Kenny Pickett puts into things. And I talked about this way before. Earlier in the season, I was like, listen, like this guy studies film. And we talked about this as the season went along, the story that Brian Batko, my partner at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, wrote about how he has a nook in the locker room where he just studies film while everyone else is kind of catching their breath. That's who Kenny Pickett is. He loves to prepare. He wants to be the leader that's ready in the moment that it's time for him. And I think you saw that in that moment there. And again, it was very similar to the Raiders game. 3 high, had to look off the safety a little bit. Actually, I think it was cover 2 against the Raiders, but still, it's a scene that he saw an opportunity for. And this time, it was a chance to say, "Hey, let me just use my eyes to keep the safety in one direction, and attack to George Pickens this way." And George Pickens ran the right route, caught the ball in rhythm, easy touchdown for them. And I think more of those moments can come. I also asked George Pickens about that play and their growth. Here was George Pickens in the locker room after the game.
Touchdown went up the seam. It seemed like a lot like your Raiders touchdown. Is that something that you and Kenny are starting to feel like when you get certain looks, you guys are on the same page a lot more now?
Oh, yeah. Whenever we get a certain defensive look and we got a certain play call to beat that defensive look, then, yeah, it's probably going to just when you got a scheme like that, timing and the right ball, right blocking. You see what I mean? Everything's going to play out exactly how you want it to. It's just if you're going to time up the right way.
And I think right there, you're hearing George Pickens breaking things down on his part and just saying, like, it just has to be the right ball, right time, and feeling when it is time to make those plays, and feeling, when the right openings open up. With the Raiders touchdown, you go back to the game winner that he completed to George Pickens, and it was very much a read, and it was an option play where George Pickens, if he saw cover 2, he broke one way, cover 3 broke the other, and he saw cover 2. Kenny saw cover 2. They completed the pass. It was a touchdown. This time it was cover 3. He ran right up the seam, and it was the way to go. And and Kenny Pickett connected with him. It was a score. Also, the Connor Heyward plays, and these are the plays that I think really show that Kenny Pickett actually is growing, and it's not just fluke luck that he's seeing things. These are structured plays where if this was the right read, the right throw into a tight pocket, into a tight window, and he made it work. There was a play to Connor Heyward deep down the middle part of the field against it was man cover 2, which is very tough if someone has good coverage, and the Browns did have good coverage. This is your backup tight end who's in because Pat Freiermuth is hurt. And he's throwing it down the middle part of the field. Kenny Pickett not only threw it over the defender, but in a perfect spot where only Connor Heyward could get to it, and in the middle part of the field where there's no safety who's coming to help him because no safety's coming out of their cover 2 responsibilities to come down and help against the backup tight end in the middle part of the field. It was the perfect throw and the perfect read, and the two of them started to eat when there was a second play where they hit on a similar look there, but. Those moments to me, and I talked about the same thing with the Steven Sims throw that he made against the Ravens that got them down the field before he made his Najee Harris touchdown pass. These aren't just kind of like, sandbox, make it up and let's get it done. These are structured, read the defense, anticipate the defense, and make solid throws. And that's something that the Steelers need from their quarterback, and it needs to become consistent. And by no means am I saying that right now Kenny Pickett is the quarterback that they need for the future and that he doesn't need to do any more growing. If he brings this next year, he's fine. He needs to take significant steps, and you even heard him say that. But the fact that he's saying that and he's doing these structured, well-designed plays in the moment, I think they're very good signs that you're getting what you want out of this guy, and he has the potential to be a franchise guy. And he's around guys like Najee Harris, who I think is a franchise guy. Pat Freiermuth, who unfortunately got injured in this game, but I think he's another franchise guy. George Pickens, looking like a really big franchise receiver. And then you still got other defenders that you got that you like. I thought that we saw more out of Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt. This was the closest to 100% we saw from him. Minkah Fitzpatrick being Minkah Fitzpatrick. And other guys stepping up, DeMonte KZ and Levi Wallace, all of that coming together. I think the Steelers have a lot of pieces on their roster for the future moving forward that are going to be very important, and that actually have a nucleus to build with instead of asking a lot of questions at the end of the season. Well, what did you accomplish? Again, I think they accomplished getting Kenny Pickett to develop into a player that they can continue building and feel confident playing in the coming years. We'll talk more about what the Steelers did and didn't do this season and in this win over the Browns in just a bit here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Ultimate Football GM. If you're a person who wants to be the GM that fixes the franchise and turns everything around, here's a game for you right now that you can play right on your phone that's going to give you that opportunity. Ultimate Football GM lets you start with a franchise. You get to pick the name, pick the city, pick the colors, pick the uniforms, all that stuff. And then when you get going, you can hire coaches, hire coordinators, hire staff members, trade players, make draft picks, trade draft picks, navigate your franchise for 25 seasons out through the ups and downs. And there's all sorts of things. Your players might get in trouble. You can draft guys that have better reputations, hotter reputations. You could weigh talent versus, personality. All those things are going to be available to you in this game. It's a lot of fun. I was able to play it. I played it 25 seasons, and seasons go fast. You can finish the season in 2 to 5 minutes if you wanted to, if you just wanted to sim through it real fast. But I played it. I've got 19 championships in 25 seasons. Think you can do better? Go to Ultimate Football GM right now and give it a shot. And hey, Locked On Steelers listeners, when you get the game, there's boosts that you can get in the game, and you can get 100% free boost to your franchise by using the promo Locked On when you go to the game store. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On in the game store right now. And to download the game, visit ultimate-gm.com or just look it up in the app store of your mobile device. Again, it's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter, your host here. I want to give some parting thoughts on just where this season was for the Steelers, because it was pretty wild at times when, as far as they fell and then as far as they climbed their way back up and just missing the playoffs. I'm not saying that any Steelers fan doesn't have the right to feel disappointed because, sure, you wanted to reach the playoffs. You hope that they could. And again, the way that they were beating some teams kind of at the end of the season, if they could have found a way in, and they weren't facing the Bills, the Chiefs, I think they could have, beaten a couple of those teams. I think I think that, we've seen they can beat the Bengals. They could beat the Ravens. They did beat the Ravens and the Bengals. I think they could beat the Chargers. I think that they could have beaten all those different teams and given themselves a good run. But again, this year was not the year that they were going to be the supreme contender unless they got some all-time upsets that were kind of, needing some extra factors there to play their way. No, I think that the Steelers came into this season knowing, hey, you got to build, you got to develop, and they built and developed. The offensive line has an identity now that whoever they go and get this offseason, and I'm thoroughly convinced that they'll go and get somebody, whether it's free agency, the draft, or both, they'll be fitting into something, and there won't be a giant question of what's the Steelers' offensive line even look like when it's playing well, which is what we were asking, not just at the start of the season, but for about 8 weeks into the bye week. And then we started to see a bit of an identity form and the aggression form and how them be able to play better, and then also protecting Kenny Pickett. I think also with the offense with Kenny Pickett, you have a bit more of an identity. You know who Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are as a 1-2 punch. You got some weapons. You're hoping Calvin Austin can be healthy next year. There's a lot of things that I think that actually work for this and what they're building towards in the near future. Now, again, you hope that you can do it. I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying, well, you still haven't won a playoff game in 6 years. Well, I don't think the Steelers were really there weren't too many good odds for the Steelers to win a playoff game this year or last year. If you want to go back way back to 2017 when they lost against the Jaguars, sure. But I think the reasons for that are kind of not the reasons for what's been going on now. And they're fighting a different battle right now. And that part of that battle is getting back and building back with a group of guys who know how to win. And as you heard Cam Heyward talking about, this is why it's so important to fight for wins and why it's not to tank, so that you can get guys that when they build into their fourth and fifth years and they're vets, they know what it's like to fight through late parts in the season. They know what it's like to go on the road to Baltimore and pull out a gutsy win, even when you're the underdog and people are doubting you. And you know what it's like also to fail. Not to sound like Thanos, but it's important to know what it's like to lose, because you don't want to ever taste that again. And I think that so the Steelers, I think they got some growth out of guys last year who went through the push to get to the playoffs. I think they got, honestly, a little bit more growth this year, because with their backs up against the wall for so long, so many guys found ways to step up. I thought Najee Harris gelled with an offensive line that wasn't giving him much early in the season, and then eventually when they started to give them more, they found answers and they became a really good group. I think James Daniels, Mason Cole, that group, they deserve a ton of credit for what they were able to do for the Steelers as this season built on. And I think it also kind of made it so that offensive line, for most of the season, I was thinking, man, that needs to be the priority. Absolutely, the first round pick, no question about it. Now, I think it's a legitimate question. I think that you could look at linebacker, you could look at defensive line, you could look at cornerback, and offensive line should still be a priority in the NFL draft, but it doesn't have to be the priority anymore. And then again, for the defense, the Steelers run defense at one point, when they gave up that big run to the Ravens, and they had teams like the Panthers, the Raiders, the Ravens again, and the Browns coming up, there was a lot of worries that they were going to be toast as a run defense, and they were just going to get bulldozed the way they did against the Ravens, the way they did against the Patriots. But they didn't let that happen in the final stretch there. And I think that there's something to be said about the answers that they found. I think you saw Mark Robinson come up and really grow up in the final couple games. I think Robert Spillane was able to step up in a lot of ways. I think Larry Ogunjobi and Cam Heyward found their rhythm in the middle half of the season. I think DeMarvin Leal, coming back from his injury, looked really solid in some of the reps that he had and the growth that he was able to make. So, I think that there's a lot to be said out there. And there's lots of questions. Devin Bush questions, Terrell Edmonds questions, Miles Jack, how the Steelers are going to deal with re-signing guys. There's definitely a lot of questions on the table. Now, this isn't just like, oh, yeah, everything's great and they'll be a number one contender next year. No one's saying that here. But we are saying that I do think the Steelers deserve credit for fighting, sticking together, and having something to build upon for next year, while also, having wins to say about it. They finished winning 5 of their last 6, and they unfortunately couldn't make the playoffs because they didn't do well enough early to mitigate their weaker part of the year. But they finished, I believe, 8-2 this year when TJ Watt plays 60% or more of the snaps. I think that shows that when they get their superstar healthy and they find ways to protect the football, they're going to have a good chance to win games. Now the question will be next year, can they get good enough to also do that and beat the teams that are among the best in the NFL? Long way to go for that. But part of it was taking the steps this year so that you could take the steps next year. Because imagine you go through the end of this season and Kenny Pickett is just not it. He's not throwing the game-winning touchdown passes. He's not stepping up in the big moments. His biggest moments seem more like flukes rather than good reads and solid structured throws into tight passing windows or, busted coverages that were any quarterback could have thrown. If that was the case, I think we'd be talking about this very different right now and be like, we're not so sure. But the energy I think that Kenny Pickett gives off continues to be that, hey, I know I'm young, but I know I can be a leader and I want to be a leader and I got to do the things to be a leader. And these are the things. And I think that the grasping points that Kenny Pickett was able to reach this year, where he was able to hold on to things and say, hey, I learned something from this. That's going to take this team, I think, in the future very far, where they start to put more things together on their roster and they start to put more things together as he starts to make more plays and they start to let him make more plays because they say, hey, you know what? We'll let you go out and be more aggressive in this moment because you are the quarterback that we want to get behind as the franchise guy. Lots and lots to keep breaking down. We will have grades for this game, and then eventually I will start to put together my grades for the entire season and then give you guys the full season length. And we'll be having that out throughout the next few weeks as the NFL playoffs continue. So we'll be getting all grades, everything else here. I just want to stop and take a moment to thank everybody that has been with this show. I met so many people this year who walked up to me at a game, at a practice, in training camp, or just out in public, and were just like, hey, man, I love listening to your show. It gets me through my morning commute. That means the world to me when y'all do that. Whoever you are. And I met some people today that, when they say that stuff to me, it means a lot when I hear that, because I put a lot of work into this. As you see, this is daily, Monday through Friday. We're cranking things out. Sometimes I put out extra things just to keep people updated when there's an extra news bit thing. But it means a lot when I hear that people do this, because I'm a person. I've been on the grind. I've done the morning commute. I've done the hardworking thing where sometimes I just want to hear a sports bit on the team that I follow and see what's going on with them and get a good vibe and, good thoughts that I can take and say, hey, okay, I didn't think about that. Or, I appreciate this perspective. And when someone tells me that I do that for them, it means the world to me. So thanks to everyone who's been riding with us all season. We hope you continue riding with us all off season, because we're going to be here all off season, breaking things down here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can find my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette covering Pitt athletics. Hope to continue to break things down for you here. And we will be, again, taking things more up in the offseason. We're going to see how things play out. I won't be able to get to Steelers stuff on Monday because Mike Tomlin will be speaking, and there'll be like the locker room and everything as people are clearing out their lockers and stuff. So I won't be able to do that because I got some other work responsibilities. But we will find a way to have a show talking about what we learned from things that were said on Monday, just more fallout from the season and breaking things down. It's going to be an interesting week. Hey, stay with us, Steelers fans. I know that it was a disappointing Sunday that you didn't get to the playoffs, but I think there's still a lot of really good things to hold on to. We'll look over some of those things and some of the bad things too as we get further into the offseason. But again, enjoy the victory Monday of getting a win over the Browns, making sure that they finish last in the division again, and the Steelers finding a way to finish strong. We'll keep looking to the future for when the Steelers might be real contenders again in the AFC. Again, we'll talk about that as we go throughout the offseason. I'm Chris Carter. Stay tuned, Steelers fans. Happy Monday.